We have talked about before that depending on how the Ukraine war ends, what the peace deal may look like, what happens, and hey, we're probably going to find out a lot of information this weekend about the crazy demands that Russia's going to make. There will be consequences. There will be consequences of this. Make no bare bones about it. There will be consequences in Europe, and there will be consequences in the rest of the world as well. And even more, the country that is most terrified about who it is going to be next isn't even Georgia, Moldova, or even the Baltics. Like, they're the ones that, don't get me wrong, they are worried. Like, they are worried about this. But the country that is most worried is Taiwan. Taiwan is terrified it could be next. Because if this war has shown anything, and especially, thank you to Trump, they are worried that if China moves, potentially in the next couple of years or so, Donald Trump will not move to protect Taiwan. He will not engage in any security guarantees, and that any peace agreement, he will throw Taiwan to the wolves. And they are terrified of this. Taiwan is a thriving democracy. It has built itself up over a number of years to sort of be that. And if the Chinese come in, that is gone. That is put to an end. And you want an example? Just look what happened to Hong Kong. And the Taiwanese know it. They know what would happen if they get, if China had its, clutches on Taiwan, it knows what's going to happen to it. And they are worried, and I think quite rightly so. So I think it's worth talking about this because Taiwan is absolutely a potential consequence for how this all shakes out and the end of the Ukrainian war. So before we do get on into this, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button down below. Of course, there is the Patreon page, the one with the donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee, the YouTube thank you button, and of course, as always, there is the Pony Club down below as well. So let's head on into this then. So Trump is now carving up Ukraine with Putin. Taiwan is terrified it could be next. So, hands duct taped behind their back, black hoods over their heads, the demonstrators lay in the street outside Russia's de facto embassy in Taipei. The Taiwanese and Ukrainians were side by side to mark the third anniversary of Moscow's invasion of Ukraine. The solidarity was an expression of the fear of Putin's invasion will now embolden Xi Jinping, China's president, in his pursuit of Taiwan. We are also now facing the threat of communist invasion. Shen Poyan, a Taiwanese influencer who participated in the demonstration last month, said on his YouTube channel, the Chinese people see a very stark parallel between what is now happening in Ukraine and the Damoclean sword now being dangled above their heads by China. Like the Ukrainians, they live now under constant threat from a neighbor who believes it has right to their territory. They also very much rely on Western support to keep that threat at bay. And as you've just seen, Donald Trump will pull that support. They are terrified, and I think rightly so. They are very rightly so to be terrified of this. And this could be like an invasion of Taiwan by China could be a direct response from this Ukraine war. It could absolutely be. So they are very, very right to worry about the parallels of what's going on here and how much America probably will not be willing to get involved in defending them. Just days, of course, after the protest, Donald Trump very publicly completely upended American foreign policy by engaging now in a shouting match on live television with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. He also then followed up by effectively shutting off all of Kiev missile defenses by ending the US intelligence sharing. In Taiwan, there is now a sense of unease has now turned into panic. That was a huge moment for Taiwan, says David Sachs, who studies Asia on the Council of Foreign Relations. Trump has ruled out all security guarantees for Ukraine and has halted military aid and is now pushing Zelensky to give up Ukrainian minimal rights, to accept a ceasefire, and for all the costs. Above all, he has made it very clear that none of America's traditional allies can actually rely on its support. And that's it. Once, China gets its hands on Taiwan, that's it. And they are worried they are now going to be used as a bargaining chip, very, very much so, in this. The implication of Taiwan are, of course, very stark. The island is now endlessly circled by Chinese warships and jet fighters, having to rely heavily now on US support as deterrent now to that aggression. While Biden, of course, promised to put American troops on the ground if China did invade, Trump has now refused to commit to now protecting the island and has claimed that Taiwan stole America's chip industry. And he's threatening now to introduce a 25% tariff on all semiconductors, the bedrock of the Taiwanese economy. Yeah, you can understand why they are in a panic. You can understand why they've gone into an absolute panic over this. I would too if I lived in Taiwan. I would be very worried about this. Anyway, Trump, of course, represents isolationism, which means he could just abandon Taiwan, said Chao Wing-la, a semiconductor engineer based in Ho Chi Minh, a city now south of Taipei. Business and, of course, politicians on the island are now scrambling now to appease the US president, with President Ling Chi-ti has also now pledged to ramp up defense spending from 2.5 to 3% of its GDP. And there is now talk of plans to massively increase its American energy imports, because that's all they've got. Taiwan is a small country. It really depends on that chip industry. And if those tariffs come in, that is going to massively negatively affect its economy. Massively negatively affect its economy. And yet, Trump doing all this stuff doesn't make any sense. As we talked about before, it is pointless engaging in this trade war because it doesn't get anything out of it. Anyway, last week, Taiwanese semiconductor manufacturer company TSMC pledged over $100 billion to build now its manufacturing capabilities in the US, one of the biggest foreign investments in American history. The investment was, of course, very well received by the president, but his warm words were, of course, no guarantee for security. In fact, the investment now may undermine the military relationship. Yeah. Yeah, you can. I keep on saying, but you can see why they're in a panic. You can see why they're in a panic, and they have every right that they are about to, be served up. You know, however the Ukrainian war ends, and we don't know. There's still a big question. This will impact Taiwan in some way. This will absolutely impact Taiwan in some way. Anyway, Taiwan is, of course, the crucible for the production of the world's most advanced semiconductors, and as a result, a full-blown war on the island would now threaten a global economic meltdown. This threat of now mutually assured economic destruction has provided what analysts have dubbed the Silicon Shield, and it is now in the US interests to protect the island. If Trump gains the capacity to make chips in the US, he could then just lose all interest in protecting Taiwan, if he has any to begin with. Yeah, that huge investment that could have sealed Taiwan's fate in many ways. It really could have. It was an attempt to try and appease Trump, but as it says there, if Trump now says he's got the capacity for those chips, so much for the Silicon Shield that protects Taiwan, right? So much for that. The Taiwanese also worry that the US president may treat the island as a simple bargaining chip as he now tries to eye up a deal with Xi. The 10% tariffs that he's now levied on China have enraged Beijing, but observers believe that Trump is now laying the groundwork for negotiations with the world's second largest economy. And we'll see what happens there. But they have every right to be worried that they are going to be a bargaining chip in that. And yeah, absolutely. You have every reason to worry. Every reason to worry because Trump does not care about Taiwan. Everything, of course, has its price in Trump's transactional world. And in Taiwan, there is a slogan: Ukraine today, Taiwan tomorrow. Yep. It has everything to worry about. Everything to worry about. And I am not surprised that that has become a slogan in Taiwan. Ukraine today, Taiwan tomorrow. That is incredibly worrying. And then they could talk about history of Taiwan, bit of its thing, what the tariff, of course, would be. And then, and they talk about, what these risks are going to be. So some in the MAGA movement seem very unnervingly relaxed about all these risks. Vivek Ramaswamy, Trump's ally, who briefly helped him run Elon Musk's Department for Government Efficiency, said that during his own presidential run last year, that he would be willing to effectively give up Taiwan once we've achieved semiconductor independence. After all that, our commitments to Taiwan, our commitments to now be willing to go to military conflict will change because that rationale is now in our self-interest, Ramaswamy said back in August of 2023. That is honest, that is true, that is credible. Trump's exact positioning on the Taiwan is, of course, still incredibly murky. Asked at the end of February if he would ever allow China to take control of the island by force, the president said, "I would never comment on that. I don't want ever to put myself in that position." At that face, you have to contrast this with Biden's rhetoric was, of course, very stark. When asked, would the US forces defend Taiwan, Biden said, yes. In fact, there was already an unprecedented attack. However, George Yin, senior fellow at the National Taiwan University, said, Trump is now merely referring to an early position of strategic ambiguity, which was the dominant approach to Taiwan in the past. Oh, yeah, it's just strategic ambiguity, guys. It's just strategic ambiguity. Don't. That's not strategic ambiguity, my friends. Trump doesn't care about Taiwan. That is the honest truth. So this is all an attempt now to avoid antagonizing China. Biden was very unusually strident in his assertion that US troops would be deployed. That, of course, was clear. However, is that what Trump wants far more from Taiwan? Last summer, he said that Taiwan should pay for its US defense supply, particularly after it, quote, took semiconductor business away from America. We're no different than an insurance company. Taiwan doesn't give us anything, he said. Ultimately, however, the truth may be that Trump just doesn't think about Taiwan nearly as much as the Taiwanese think about him. He is much more preoccupied with China. Trump's advertisers have told the New York Times that the US president wants to strike a wide-ranging trade deal with China that will go beyond the trade relationship and now begin to include big investments, Chinese commitments to buy more American goods, an agreement now on nuclear weapon security. And that would be very bad news for Taiwan. What does that mean for them in that deal? Trump's, of course, first buddy, I like that host been calling that now. Elon Musk may well, of course, the Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick and the Treasury Secretary Scott Bennett are now reportedly trying to encourage the president to make such an agreement. Because, Musk and Tesla have massive business interest in China, massive business interest in China. Musk will absolutely push Trump to do some sort of deal. And hey, if we have to give up defending Taiwan, so be it. Because Musk doesn't care about Taiwan either. Proposals, of course, include major Chinese investments in the US, big purchases of US crops, planes, and measures that are, of course, address China's overcapacity now for manufacturing. The US business community in general wants a more positive US China relations. They want to invest in China. They want to continue to manufacture in China, said Sachs. Trump also wants China to crack down on the fentanyl trade and take back Chinese immigrants who were in the US illegally. Sachs believes that the tariffs on Chinese goods are just an opening shot in these negotiations rather than just being the new normal. We'll see. Those who, of course, believe that Trump is some uber China hawk are telling themselves that is what they want to hear, he says. While Biden, of course, framed his foreign policy around a concept of democracy versus autocracy, Trump has no ideological axe to grind. In fact, Xi and Trump have something very much in common. The Chinese leader, coveting, of course, of Taiwan mirrors Trump's very own imperialist ambitions to take over Greenland, Canada, and Panama. His belief is that basically it's Vladimir Putin, Xi Jinping, and himself, and maybe MSB in Saudi Arabia, who are going to determine the contours of the world, says Sachs. Essentially, the smaller powers do not have a say in that, and that is essentially hugely vulnerable for Taiwan. Just as Ukraine is now being excluded from peace talks with Russia by Trump, so too could Taiwan now find itself in a pawn of the president's great game with China. And like I say, you can just see how so much is being worried on this. So much over this. But yeah, they're right. If you were in Taiwan, I'd be worried as well. I'd be worried as well if I were in Taiwan. I'd be very worried indeed. Because hey, they're right. Ukraine today, Taiwan tomorrow. And if it is, quote, true, but again, maybe this is what these China hawks are trying to tell themselves, lull themselves into some delusion about Trump, thinking, "Oh, don't worry. In reality, this is all some magic 4D chess game that Trump is playing in order to get this amazing trade deal with China." Well, last time he did this, he didn't end up doing any deal with China. Why is he going to do one now? But Taiwan will be put on the table, and Taiwan will not get a say. And I'll tell you this now. You are looking probably next weekend, and we'll see how this all shakes out, at a brand new great power carve up. That Trump, Putin, Xi, they can carve up the world however they want, as long as they work together. And that creates a very, very worrying new world. A very worrying one indeed. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.